All right, all right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for where you are. I'd like to welcome you to the OdivaZ Women's Race Power Up Enabled. It is an exciting night here we have in the pen in the stream here. We've got about 1:14 left to go before we get this race started, but I've got a special guest with us. Chris, how's it going this morning?
You know what? It's good to be a special guest. It's really good to be a special guest to be able to watch these 25 women throw punches this morning on the Devil's Loop, the 5 laps of the unbelievable, Cauldron of Doom, if we call it that, but the Volcano circuit, right? The crit, the original super crit course. It's awesome to be here. It's great to be a part of this race again. My goodness. What are you doing, sir?
No, it's been an exciting week. In the last couple weeks, you're going to see a new team here, Chris, and I will introduce them in just a little bit, but it's a very exciting time. Just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we actually have had a new team, and even last race, they were a huge force at the front of this race. So in the next 20 seconds, we're going to get going and we're going to see these teams form up. I'm really excited, and we're going to introduce this team as well as our veteran teams as we go.
10 seconds to go. It's just a...
That is the voice of the commissar. We know him well, and the gate is about to drop, and these racers are gonna go. But names that you know, and names that I'm about to learn, it sounds like, as well. I recognize that beautiful chevron of our ride leader near the front there. That would be really, really important for us to pay close attention to that. Now, as the gate drops, people do not go crazy. They actually behave themselves. Why is that? I think when you watch these virtual races, normally most of the time you expect people to behave badly when that gate drops, but they're not doing that. What's going on, Jason?
Yeah, that's one of them, and they listen to instructions. So here's the thing right now.
Yeah, they listen to directions.
Exactly. So what we're looking at is a neutral rollout, a neutral start that we have here. And I'm on Kristen Green here, and everyone is going to be gathering up around her, as we go through the start finish line here. You're going to see these women group up because this is the neutral rollout. This is not a all out put the pedal to the metal from the start. This is we are going to get a chance to get everyone up to pace together, warmed up, get ready to go, and we are going to launch them right at the lap counter today, Chris, and that is where we're headed right now.
I love the lap counter. It's a great place to start. It's an easy place to see what's going on, especially as that lap counter counts things down. And Kristen Green, we know really well. You'll see a lot of names that you know if you are a regular viewer of this. Kim Beezer, I saw in this group. Liz Comley, very famous finisher in this group. Webster, Pacala. There's so many different names in here. Herzog. That you know well from this race. What I love about this event is that there are not 2 or 3 or 4 famous names, but 20 folks that regularly come out and do this. They don't make every week because life, but they do make frequent appearances. And when they do, it matters. It's really cool to see. Okay, so as we're coming up and through this, if you're a first-time viewer, Jason, tell us a little bit about this neutral area here. We're coming up. It's a little rolly. We're about to go into this this cool tunnel. But how long do we have until the fireworks begin, until girls behaving badly is number 1 on the list?
Yeah, we're not too far.
Badly. Just race.
There we go. There we go. You have it straight from the racer's mouth there. So what we're going to do is we're going to head through this little cave. We're going to make a short turn, but we're just about 5K until we get to the banner here, and we'll be letting them go. But where we're headed is the Volcano circuit. And what it is a course that goes in, I think we'll be going counterclockwise today, and we will be looking at a course that is relatively flat. We've had this conversation before. It is definitely to the advantage of those riders who can put out a good amount of watts. But there are enough of little kickers in this course that can allow riders that have a punch or are on the lightweight side that we've seen in the past to get away, to make a move, and to really make a dent in this group as they make it. So we're right here headed through the tunnel. We are just about onto the Volcano circuit here, Chris.
Now they're doing a pretty easy turn here, right here, but right around 2 watts per kilo, relatively slow. As we're looking at that speed, it's about 22 miles an hour, which is, is nothing to scoff at. But there are a couple of people who have trickled off the back who definitely have to climb their way back into it. We've got racers of all different variety participating here this morning. But those folks definitely want to get back in the group because there's some aerodynamic advantage being had here at the front with this group of Kim Beezer and Thompson and Crochet. Maybe I said that properly. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I got a little bit too excited about pronouncing it correctly, and I pronounced it wrong. In the same way that somebody from the East might say Nevada, when in fact, ladies and gentlemen, it's just Nevada. That's all it is.
We just
nothing fancy.
We try to get fancy here on the commentary, but you know what? We've got a really great group of women. We've made that right turn onto the Volcano now. We're going to be riding on the outside edge, but we have a little bit of time. We're going to talk about this new team. If you notice, Chris, there are a couple new tags there, and specifically, you know, we have our veterans of the OdivaZ, the PTZs, and the group like that.
Yeah.
But you'll see a new tag called Fearless. There's a couple riders. I think there's 5 or 6 today. Last week, we actually took second place, first and second place, and definitely contended for the top 5. They've got some fast riders. This group was actually
very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've got Kim Beezer there with the KRT tag as well, but this is a team to be reckoned with today, just because this is a team that has been built out of a group that found a community outside of Zwift Academy. They were looking for another group to be able to bond with each other and be able to work as a community, and they were looking for a place to go so that they can get scheduled workouts, they can get, you know, stronger and have the support of each other and still be able to race. So far to say that they actually even made their own racing series that actually rides opposite of ours. So it's very complimentary because we actually have a women's race every Saturday now, Chris.
Oh, that is awesome. A women's race every Saturday. So cool. Team Fearless, very, very cool. And we recognize Crazy Canuck in that as well. You're right. You know, in the absence of, you know, the Zwift Academy, when you get into a group like that, you find that you really enjoy riding with the other folks, testing yourselves, having those regular challenges. But that's a seasonal thing. And we know it's a seasonal thing coming in. So the desire to race together, and sometimes people integrate themselves into another. There's a strong women's, group in the OdivaZ group, and a strong race group, KRT. But sometimes it's fun to take a few of your folks and to look around and go, you know, we could integrate ourselves in with one of those groups, or we could reach out and punch them in the nose. Now, I'm not advocating violence here in any way, but sometimes it's really fun. I mean. And off the bike, in the chat rooms, they're all friends. They're all talking about the same exciting things. But it's fun to put on your tribe's colors and to get on a bike and race hard to take out some other folks. All right, we're coming down the big hill here to the flat on the outside of the cauldron, and they're all together. It's really good. So as you talk about these groups, what is the character of this group? And I asked that with reference of, you know, say a KRT might be really well known for that time trial off the front kind of thing. I think of a Kim Beezer in a case like that, or a team OdivaZ where you have a Taya Freestead who's a pursuit rider, and some of her other teammates are really, really good at that. What's the character of Team Fear?
So from the weeks before, they've been very, very careful to watch how this group goes. I would say to the point of being respectful, to understand and trying to get a feel for how this peloton moves and how it flows. And so in the last race, we saw them watching the groups go forward and closing those gaps down, Chris, something we've never really seen. We've seen groups of 2 riders from both OdivaZ and Fearless close down huge gaps in groups of 2 or 3 women working together from the same team to close gaps down. And that's what we were seeing in last race. And I think it's going to be all hands down, going to see who can put down the power today with looking like the numbers are with OdivaZ and Fearless today.
Excellent. You know, as I look around this group, I see, Sarah Holmichael still in this group, holding that B category. How much do the categories really matter in your mind, Jason, today, as far as where they belong and who they're going to race with? Do those A, B, and C kind of tags dictate where they're going to end up?
I think they do to a certain extent, but with the likes of like Megan and Stephanie Holmichael there, what you'll find is that power kind of is not as much important as the tactics that they use. These two ladies, for example, work very well together. They ride, they train in the endurance lab together, so they know each other and they can get each other where they need to go to make sure that one or both of them are where they need to go when the time is right. And it looks like our time is almost ready to let this group go.
No kidding. We can see the banner, oh, the stone banner in the distance there. We can see the commissar on the course, and we're going to turn it over to him in just a moment. The night train, well known in this case. These riders start to queue at the front here. They definitely want to be behind that chevron, that cone of awesome, because that is our lead rider. We can hear the train coming at just the right time. It seems like everything is aligned this morning. We probably have, oh gosh, maybe another 10 seconds before we kick this thing off. And it looks like as they get ready to see, we can all see it. That banner is the start. And when we hit it, the commissar will give us those starting directions and we'll turn it over to the night train right now.
Go, 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 ladies. Go, go, go.
5 laps. Here we go. 5 laps. Commissar says it starts. And they start to ramp up. We look at those heart rates. They were already starting to accelerate when they could see where the start was going to be. And now we are starting to push a little bit harder. But no one has exploded off the front. They are looking around. We've got Green sitting on the front still. There it is. Michael to the front. She burns by. They all ramp up to try to stay on her wheel. This is the time when you try to figure out who it's going to be, who is going to lead this thing out, and who are you going with? Are you an instigator or are you a follower? For now, right, you'll have your opportunity a little later to kick it into gear and just show them what you've got. But at the beginning, you want to make sure that you are part of that A selection. What's the big difference here? If you make that A selection group, Jason, what is the race going to be like for you versus someone who may miss that initial move?
With this course, because of how flat it is and its nature, if you are in this group, we're looking at over 10 ladies and 3 ladies trying to close this gap, you're going to find an aerodynamic advantage. And you may be asking, what is that? That means you can get behind somebody in this game, in this platform, and be able to ease off the pedal and recover just that micro bit to be able to relax and be able to continue to take pulls at this group, rather than, as you see in the back off this motorcycle view, 2 or 3 riders trying to close that gap. They've got the wind in their face. So these ladies could actually hide behind each other or in between each other to get that advantage and be able to recover and have something for the punch at the end of this race.
And we've got Team Moose, Kala, Beezer, Herzog, Webster, all in this group, hanging with Kristen Green there at the front. And but they're still, behaving quite well at this point. No one has really put anybody in a real uncomfortable spot, but the heart rates are starting to ramp up here. We're seeing 160, 170 beats per minute of some of these folks. In the grand scale, how high is that, and how high are we going to see these today, Jason?
Yeah, so a lot of times we can get a huge range, and with heart rate, like anything else, it's a huge variable. In relation to how they're starting now to where they'll be at the end, they will be at their limits. We have seen as high as 200s from some of the women that we've had here on the broadcast. But you know what? Again, it's variable, but they are going to be sky high today. And this group is really making a good selection with Miss Beezer, Conley, Stephanie Carmichael, Kristen Green, Z Kala, Alice Webster, and Liz, the Crazy Canuck. They are all in this group together.
Mm-hmm.
It's Angela Webster.
Thank you so much.
Angela Webster.
There you go.
Excellent. That's what we need to know.
Exactly.
This is great. This is great. And they're kind of working through this section, but we're starting to see the character of the course start to be a little bit more on display here. We have another one of these punchers that go up. It's not that hard, but if you don't have the power up with those around you, that's where a gap can form, and then you can find yourself chasing on. Again, not terribly difficult to chase on in this section. However, you don't want to have to do that very often. You want to be the person who's reserving a little bit to the end because you may need to use it at a different time. Now, we see the OdivaZ jerseys, Jason, here. We see a few of those in there. We see the KRT jersey, which is that blue with the pink and the light blue and the yellow stripe in it. What are Team Fearless wearing right now?
Let's take a look. We can
Yellow!
jump. There you go. That's what I was thinking. I think they do wear yellow. This is not a pink team from what I understand from the description. So any other color than pink is from what I understand. There you go. You had it from the horse's mouth. So every time we've had interactions and from their descriptions, they are not a pink team. They are yellow. They are blue. They are green. Today they are in their color yellow as they race. until that time comes where they have a kit to be able to put on and wear. But you know what? Right now, Fearless is in this group and they're in it to win it.
You know, for people who don't know, you know, getting a kit in game is not an easy thing. You can't pay for a kit in game. You can't unlock your own kit in a game. It's a really difficult process. Do you want to maybe talk just a little bit, Jason, about your knowledge of the process of getting Zwift, the company, to add your flag, as it were, to the game?
Yeah. So one thing it's just, first of all, it's just a little bit of history about how involved these groups are. You will see groups like KRT, OdivaZ, PTZ. These are groups that have been with the platform, with the company on this platform, working with them, giving them feedback as a community from the beginning. And as a reward or as just a little notch on the belt to say thanks or a nod from the cap to allow them to fly their own colors. But it's not an easy task. A lot of these kits needed to be professionally made by a designer specifically, and a lot of them are actually real life kits. So I myself actually own a kit that looks like the kit exactly in the game, and we were able to transform that into the OdivaZ kit, and PTZ as well, because we've seen BJ Alfonso wear his PTZ kit as well, and we've seen KRT kits also. So a combination of the stars aligning and having what you needed at the right time, and just Zwift being great enough to pass down and give that nod to the community that really helped them right from the beginning.
And part of that too is the timing of it. I mean, you know, the OdivaZ kit was, I believe, the first real life kit, virtual team kit added to the collection. Now there were some other ones before, you know, Trek and some of those that were real life kits as well. But as far as a virtually developed community, a strong virtual community that created their own team, their own jersey, OdivaZ was the first into the game. And it was at a time where there wasn't, you know, 10 questions a day. Hey, can we get our kit in game? But now there's quite a knock at the door. Here we come around under the banner again. It'll show, and it does, 4 laps to go. There's lots of confetti, which means somebody got a best time somewhere. You can usually tell because you get those thumbs up along the way. The system prompts you to give that ride on to all those who did something special around you. And it looks like some folks did. They did faster lap than normal, faster lap in the last 30 days. And I would not expect any difference. Now, but those kits are harder to get maybe than they were. They've always been hard to get, but than they were, say, a year and a half ago. Since 2 years ago, when the system was free, or since a while ago when the system was only $10 a month, right? Things have changed. The landscape has changed. Yeah, too soon. Too soon? No.
Too soon?
Yeah, too soon. Too soon. Now, there's still quite a bit of good behavior happening in the group here, and no one has really tried to break it up. But you do see 4 strong OdivaZ riders in that group. You see 2 KRT riders in that group, and you see those yellows hanging near the back, making sure that they are connected to what's going on, but not throwing punches around at the front. Not yet. Not with 4 laps to go. But back to that jersey discussion for a second. It is one of the characters of this virtual world that make it unique, that people can actually plant their flag. Well, they wear their flag. They drape their flag around them. But it's those tribes that makes a race like this compelling. It is compelling when you think of all the riders who are doing their own thing, right? The people who come out and go for their own performance. But there's something a little bit different when you are rooting for a team, because you don't have to know the player intimately if you share the same flag. There's a rooting interest in our tribes, isn't there? You know, that we don't know everybody, but we do know that one time we saw one rider, a Justin Purificati, pull off an unbelievable win at a race in Las Vegas. And we like that plucky little team. And oh my gosh, there's another one. We see Beezer, with that Herzog with that OdivaZ jersey on. Beezer's wearing the KRT. And we might like to root for that rider in the same way, because maybe they could pull off that one thing that one guy did that one time, right? That's the benefit of a tribe. And so as we get to know the character of a team Fearless a little bit more now, we get a sense that we might want to follow that plucky little underdog, that Boise State of cycling. And I know the Boise State story really well because that's where I work. I'm a professor at Boise State. And but we might want to, we might learn something about them today that makes a fan of us. Teams are awesome. Teams are fun to watch race, and they're filled with individuals. But a team, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So as we come back outside again, Jason, who, in your opinion, are the strongest teams in women's racing? I'm putting you big time on the spot here to cover one of these, but who are the strongest teams in women's racing right now?
Very quickly, over the last months or so, because of the time window that we're in, I think we are a little bit kind of, I would say, closed off to feeling that maybe Team OdivaZ might be a force to be reckoned with. But as I look around and we look at the other women's races on Sunday for the Aussie race, as well as the opposite weeks, and they had a huge turnout last Saturday at the Fearless race, I have a feeling this Team Fearless is actually the team that we're going to be looking at to be strong as we move forward, because they're bonding and they are looking to find somewhere to place their flag. And I think it's going to be obviously in women's racing. It's a full women's team, but they've got a full gamut of racers, Chris. They've got all A category all the way through D, where other teams may only have kind of the upper echelon there, and they are moving their riders slowly from C to B. This team has a very bottom heavy side, which are very good at making sure that all the riders are included. So I feel that team is up and coming and someone that we need to watch.
You threw out a couple of comments there that I cannot let go. Bottom heavy, what's that supposed to mean, Jason? Oh my goodness, there's terrible things happening this morning. It's awesome. Now, as we look around to these bikes, we're coming up lots of ride-ons falling right now. We see just a difference in bikes. Now, that bike bling that we see in the glowing Tron bike, or as Zwift called it originally, the Zwift Experimental, and then quickly changed their name to what the community called it. They also call it that Tron bike. It's an indicator of a couple of different things. Now, it's a fast bike for sure. We'll talk about the aerodynamics here in just a second. But what to you is it more of an indication of when you see those glowing wheels, that glowing frame of an experimental bike, Jason?
So this bike is not easy to come by, Chris. So what it takes is you to climb the height of Mount Everest, not just once, but several times. And
which is difficult when you're so bottom heavy, as you just described of Team Fearless. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yes. So with that, when you do see a rider that has this Tron bike with the glowing wheels, you know that they have put time in, and not just one ride, several rides over the course of several months and maybe even years to be able to get that. But that goes for any of these bikes, Chris. We're on board with one of our riders, and they are on the basic Zwift bike, and it's got great colors, it's got a great weight and aerodynamic advantage. But as we switch over to one of the other riders here, you may find someone has a Trek or maybe a Cervelo S5. All of these are accomplishments that you can get while you ride in the game. And so specifically, kind of the highest level or echelon of achievements is the Tron bike, as we see 4 or 5 even in this group. These riders have been on, and you know that they have put the miles in.
Now, we're starting to see a little bit more motion at the front here. Yes, we would expect to see that when we coming up and over to these sections. As you talk about the bikes and the wheels, I think it's important to point out that there is enough of a difference in the way that they are designed that we can see them behave differently on different parts of the course. Now, Green is sitting on the wheel of Kala, who is also got that Fear name in their title. You got to help me figure out which. It looks like I'm going to go with calling them by the tribe. But we see a power-up drop right here, and that is the arrow that's coming off the front. That's M&M right there at the front, coming off the front with that Czech flag here. That is something, I believe that's a Czech flag. Correct me if I'm wrong. Imagine that there's a flag with red, white, and blue on it, and we struggle to figure out which one it is. There are so many with red, white, and blue, most popular colors in the world. There looks like they're all going to come back together. That was not a move of note. They did not surge forward so far. But we talk about those bikes and those characteristics. We see riders who have selected a deeper dish wheel. We know that in the real world and in the virtual world, that those wheels carry more rotating mass, which means that they, once spun up, right, once at speed, it takes less energy to keep them at that speed. They lose their energy, their centrifugal force slower, right? They have a greater aerodynamic edge, which means once spinning, they spin longer. Now, they're a little bit heavier than those flat profile wheels, the ones that are not deep dish. So those folks can keep those wheels spinning, the smaller ones, faster while they're coming up a hill with less energy. But once they're on the flat and they're spinning those things, the thinner wheels require a little bit more energy to keep them spun up because they don't have that rotating mass to keep them moving. You're like, why are we getting a science lesson on a Saturday morning? This is your schoolhouse rock, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you need to know. Conjunction junction, what's your function, the whole bit. When the wheels are bigger, they roll faster, longer, but they're harder to get going. They're like a freight train. They're like a big bottom end, as Jason described it, of a race team. They've got a lot of power once they get moving. So as we come up and through here, getting ready to go outside again for this part, we're going to leave the questionable confines of the sulfur air here of the inside of the caldera. I don't know how this is OSHA approved, to come back outside into the fresh air, and we don't see anybody making any big moves. It begs the question, what have these riders circled on the chalkboard for their strategy today of when they're going to make their move? So I ask our #1 prognosticator in cycling, Jason Flores. Jay Flo, so when's that going to happen? When's Coach Jay Flo telling people to throw down the gauntlet?
So here's the funny thing, Chris. So these riders are being very tame, and we are in our third, about to be our fourth lap, and these riders haven't really made a huge move forward. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I have a feeling that a lot of the riders in this front group are actually pretty tired. If we've been looking around, there have been so many races on the platform that you may even find a race every minute, Chris. Can you imagine being able to get in a race every minute of the day? It's amazing. So what you may find is that a lot of these riders are actually preparing for a big race that's actually happening next Saturday, and it's called Team Worlds. It's put on by a gentleman named Tam Burns and a group TFC, and that's another team that we've seen here in our race as well. But it is a huge race. We have over 650 entries, both an individual women's race, which a lot of these women have their eye on, but there is a huge open ride or open teams race, which a lot of the riders here are tagged, ready to race that next week. So they would end up being on their last week of build, moving into a taper next week. So I'm sure there are tired legs in this group for sure.
For sure. You are not kidding. As they come here through the big bottom of the course here. Too soon? Too soon. Too soon. That we get ready to come up for this 3 laps to go moment, where we get a big push up the front. I think that you may be right. They're again, behaving nicely in this group right now, but that is not the character of this race. Usually there's someone who tries to impose their will and see who can come with them. And I think those folks are in the group today, but we are missing a few of the big hitters that I would expect to see in that race next week, and are probably part of many of these races, Taya Freestead being one of those. Who else do you see who's not here today that's normally a big instigator, maybe leaving room for someone to have a heroic finish that we do not expect to see? Before you answer that, I'm seeing just a little bit of a separation here. We've got our ride leader, Green, trickling off the front a little bit of a gap between her and Sarah Holmichael. Is this possibly a soft launch where you get somebody to gap off their teammate? Maybe you can explain a little bit more about the technique of gapping off your own teammate off the front in a group like this as well.
So yeah, let me touch on that first. So as we jump on board, we've really stretched this out. And as you see, all the riders are in single file line. This happens in real life as well. And what that tells us is that riders are on the limit. They're on what we call the rivet, or going very hard. And as this group tries to group back together, they really have to push. And so launching someone off the front could easily be done where there's a pace that is raised to a higher level. A rider hangs onto that front, and just as that rider reaches the maximum speed, they'll launch by to get a bigger gap, and that rider that led them out will back off the gas to go back to the other group in hopes of opening a larger gap there, Chris. So that's what that has, but it looks like they are just coming back together. So sometimes it's just that people were going harder and they were trying to test the legs. So it could be any of those. And I'm on board with Stephanie Hallmichael here, and she's with her team, and they're watching one of their riders, Z Kala, off the front. So I don't think they're going to chase because they are wearing the same colors there. And if that gap does open up, you will not find riders from the same team closing that gap, unfortunately.
Now we see one of the riders who has fallen off the back of this group, Webster, just a little bit ago, under the pressure of something that happened earlier. Crazy Canuck as well trickled off the back. They're going to try to gather together. We've got maybe a race in the back that's forming here. There was some pressure applied at some point, or heck, maybe they looked over to the side. They were looking for a squirrel and they looked up and all of a sudden the group was gone. That can happen too. That gap off technique is a really interesting one. In a live race, out in the real world, well, let's call this the real world as well. Which do we live in? Which is real? Which is fake? Who knows? But that gap off technique is often best created when the pace is high enough that the person who is on your wheel, you're the person who's gapping off a teammate, doesn't want to come around. The pace is high enough that they're getting enough benefit from you that they just don't want to do that. And sometimes you can add a little psychological twist, and I've done this before in gapping off by saying, oh man, let him go. Let her go. It's just not worth it. They had, they just had a Red Bull 2 hours ago and they were going to work it off, or, this is too early. Or just you convince the group that it's just not worth it. Or those little gap offs are nice when you force someone to come around you, burn a match, and then you in that second position can quickly sit on their wheel and let you pull them back and do the same thing again. Lather, rinse, repeat. We are with 2 laps to go here, Jason, and we have not seen any big tactics coming out here. We see a lot of people in the same type of bike. We see a lot of people with these deep dish wheels. There are not any of these kind of standard expected marginal gains that we might look around the group and go, oh, well, this person is about to impose their will. I think the fatigue factor is really important here too. But that leaves so many different possibilities at the end of this race. Who is it going to be that's going to make this big move? Okay, so Jason, for you, who are the top 3 people in this group right now that are going to make your MySpace friends list, top friends?
Before I give you my top 3, I want to go back. There are a couple riders. I mean, we see a different composure of this front group. As you mentioned earlier, there are a couple of our riders that typically are here that aren't. You mentioned Taya. I know Kirsten Catronis is not here today as well as Miss Beth York, and she just checked on social media here, giving a thumbs up, saying that she misses the ladies here racing and she's going to be at the next one. But I think between these 3 or 4 ladies that are normally running the front of this group, I think those are the ladies that we're missing today in today's race. But as we go down, go ahead.
Oh, going down here into the big bottom of the course again. Thank you for pointing that out. I would expect you to do exactly that. Beth York, the one you talk about, very, very strong rider in so many ways. I've seen her race personally. I've sat next to her to listen to her awareness and race acumen. She and I have been able to broadcast together in some pretty fancy spots, fancy schmancy, in fact. And she is always missed when she's not in the group. But to your point, there are some big names that are not here today. And that doesn't mean that there aren't some big names in the group, because there are. This is not the junior varsity racing here today. And Paula decides that she's going to show us a little bit of that. And she pushes off the front and asks that question, who's coming with me? And it looks like there are a couple people who want to do that. Eminem in that group, Croucher in that group, and maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. And if I am, I apologize. Hammer Nutrition represented also in here. Michael still hanging on to that group, but we see a gap now of 2 seconds and power-ups being dropped to chase her down. Why is this happening as we come for 1 lap to go, Jason?
So at this point, we are looking at the pace getting raised, and these legs are starting to get tired. We're reaching that 35-minute mark, close to the 40 minutes at the end of this race. These ladies have been on the pedal really steady till the end, but they are going to try to shake as many people off as they can as they get into this final lap to go, so that there are not as many people to contend for the final for the final push. And as you were saying, my top three, going back to that, we typically see Zcala make the move just like she does now. She is a super light rider, so every time she hits that ramp like we just did, she is going to put the pedal to the metal. We've got one rider off the front here, Croucher, looks like, trying to make that chase. It's 9 seconds to go, and we've got Team OdivaZ otherwise here on the front, controlling the pace, knowing that Zcala's up there. So I know Zcala definitely has the punch for those climbs because of being so lightweight, but I think between Megan Herzog and Alice Webster, I think those two riders would round out for today's race. I think those are the ones that can make some moves, but unfortunately Miss Webster has fallen off the back. But you know, Megan is right here, right with the group, and if she can just close that little bit, I think we're going to be seeing her at the front of this group with 1 lap to go.
There's a bell that comes out. There it is. I know you like to hear it. One of your favorite things, the 1 lap to go bell. And we have 11 seconds to Kala right here. Maybe in this time you can give us a little bit of a background on Kala, where she's from. She's a unique rider in many, many ways. You know, not part of the standard flag composition that we'd see in a race like this, but they're starting to ramp it up just a little bit, but they are not chasing her nearly as hard as they need to be able to catch on. They may have already decided, gosh, my legs are tired. Let's sprint it out for second place. This doesn't look like an honest to goodness chase group. Maybe they don't believe that she's got it, but she's backed it off just a little bit here, 2.5 watts per kilo. But this group is not going to do enough right now to catch on. They've got an aerodynamic advantage, but it's not that kind of aerodynamic advantage. You have to be putting out at least the same effort to catch somebody on you know, a flat like this. That is for sure. Aerodynamic advantage or not, you're going to have to put out more effort to be able to catch on to the back of this group. So Jason, tell us a little bit more about this rider in the front. Who is she? She's mysterious. She's like Batman.
Yeah, we see Zcala come to a lot of our races and our rides during the week. You'll see her on the broadcast across the channels. But she actually hails from China and is a recreational rider out there. That's really to the extent that we know. I know that she is a very punchy rider. I know that she respects the group. I know that she rides with her teammates most of the time through the group to make sure that they are there to the finish of the end of the race. But I know she's got a crazy punch because of how light she is and the amount of power that can be generated. It essentially neutralizes or changes the composition of this race typically, and it ends up being a race for what we're seeing now as they let this rider go, a race for second, because they are looking for an organization to be able to chase, and you need 2 or 3 riders, but those are riders from the same team, so they are not going to put the pressure on. So riders like Kim Beezer would need other riders from KRT to really push the pace, because the riders from OdivaZ aren't going to close that gap. They're going to look for a 1, 2, 3 punch if they can, and they have enough riders in this group to make that happen today.
They do have enough riders to make it happen, and you're absolutely right. There's no way that her own team is going to try to pull her back with this 10-second gap, and that's really important to point out. A few other things from Kala. She's an Aquarius. She likes long walks on the beach. She tried to be a vegan for a while, found it didn't suit her. She's not a big Ben Affleck movie fan, and that's understandable in today's day and age. She likes the color light purple, which, you know, a lot of people don't. I mean, it's a bold statement from this rider, and it's evident in her riding. But we're starting to see this gap dip a little bit. We can see her in the distance. It's 8 seconds to this rider now. Kala is starting to drift back a little bit. Not sure what happened. Went from 10 seconds to 6 seconds. We are seeing this ramp up just a little bit. We've got the lead out tag on green, you know, which is a ride leader tag, but maybe that's also saying, hey, I'm going to lead out Michael on this one. I'm going to ramp it up at the end and give her a launch. Now, that gap grows again a little bit out to 8 seconds, and she's really putting it down. Her teammate is not going to chase her down and does back it off. And as we come here to, as Jason so aptly described it, the big bottom of the course, the thunder down under of the course, the, hey, I'm working on it part of the course, we know that the big finish is coming soon. What is your prediction for this big bottom finish, as it were, Jason?
Like I said in my top three, you know, Stephanie Michael is in this group. She's made the selection. Kristen Green has had a couple setbacks in a couple races, but she does come in with pretty fresh legs. If they were working this right, they will line this up, and Kristen Green will put the pedal on. Stephanie Michael will hold that wheel and should be able to have the punch. If I know her training, or if I could predict what her coach would do, I'm sure she's got those 1 minute intervals down and those 15-second bursts. So if they could time this just right, I think that those two can put a 1-2 punch here from this group that's chasing down Kala vigorously or violently.
Now,
what would be the right
I
word?
want to point out something here that could put Kala in danger here, because there's not enough of a gap here to avoid the surge. There's a point when these Clydesdales horses, that they are going to see that finish line and they're going to go hard. And you know what? Teammates can't hold back the rush, right? They can help to not chase back the lead, but they can't hold back the rush. They've got to find that surge themselves, and they've got to be a part of this. They want to be part of the finish. So it is entirely possible, as this group surges around them, that they could pull Kala back. She could find herself with only 5 seconds now. Boy, she's just right up there. It's not enough of a gap to give her any security that she can drift across that line with her hands up. Her hands are going to be on the bar to the bitter end here. And it's now 4 seconds. She is punching 7 watts per kilo, ringing the bell there for a second. But as we come into the cauldron the last time, and I'll try to give you the best call as I see it here right now, there is a real risk that comes into play here. Green is not trying to overtake her, but she has to make sure that she stays close enough at the front. She's got Beezer on her wheel, drifts past. Beezer starting to pick it up right now. Crocier right in there as well. The Hammer Nutrition rider also right behind. These are all people that want to get on the finish here. Kala bumps it up. My goodness, 12 watts per kilo? That may not be legal in this country or a violation of international law. We'll find out later. But Green now trying to ramp up to keep in front. JM comes around. Also, Kim Beezer with a big KRT with a kick. She's coming around, and she's going to take that second spot for sure, no doubt. Eminem holding on for the third, unless some of these others can come around her, and it doesn't look like it. Boom. Green and Michael, a great job for Team OdivaZ, making sure their rider gets off the front, stays off the front, and gets that win. But they're not going to have that team crush, that team hug on the podium today, because other riders came around to do it. We'll get those official results in just a second. But let's do a quick recap. 40 minutes of good behavior, 30 seconds of just all-out crazy talk. It was just nuts there at the end. And while the OdivaZ team did a nice job of holding that gap, they did not have it at the end with the big sprint to get them on the podium with their teammate. But they're going to have to be satisfied that Kala got on the podium in the top spot to boot. But the other riders showed why they were here today. They weren't out for just a casual ride. They wanted to do something way more than just belong. They wanted to be on the podium, and it looks like some of them did. So as we look at those those initial recaps, how did that top 5 bear out? And did it look like the friends list that you had put on your MySpace page, Jason?
No, you know, Chris, it was a hard fought all the way down to the last couple hundred there. But Sarah Croucher and I believe it was Kim Beezer were able to make it just around Kristen Green and Stephanie Michael there to round out that top 5 behind Z Kala this morning. But man, the power that Beezer and Croucher put just at that final bit. You saw the riders there on the playback jumping out of their seats, really putting the power down. We saw a huge burst of 12.5 from our lead rider Z Kala to really put the last nail in the coffin. But the ladies behind her in that group really put it down as well. Kristen Green started off with that lead out, putting down the truck and really making a huge effort. About 500 or 800 meters to go. Stephanie Michael was on her wheel, but Kim Beezer was able to kind of push through and bring Sarah Croucher around just at the last moment, right at about 100 meters to go. And that is a tough place to make those moves. But it was an exciting last bit there. That last 1K is what we live for, is why we race, Chris. If you can make it to that final selection, you have made it in this world. That's what I feel.
Okay, and I would agree completely. So as we get ready for that, and we'll give it again here, that top 10 rundown that we've got in the group here. But we'd love to know just really how the teams played out. We talked about tribes earlier. What did these teams provide for us today? What can we point out? What successes do we have for team? today?
Yeah. So with this time slot, obviously we get a lot of Team OdivaZ riders being hosted by the OdivaZ, and we get the other teams like KRT and Team Fearless. We didn't see the team tactics that we've seen in the past weeks just because we haven't had the numbers for whatever reason it may be. Typically we see more PTZ riders, the likes of Beth York, Ian Jansen. Today we didn't see as many as we did, so I don't think it played as much of a role. I think it's a matter of making sure that your kit is out there. Riders like Kim Beezer, making sure that her KRT kit is out there. Team Fearless letting them know, hey, we are out here. We've got our yellow kits on, and we are a team to be reckoned with. So I think not as much as in the past, but I think just as much fun, Chris. Just as much fun today.
That's awesome. And to your point, Team Fearless, a new team on the block, makes it into that top 10 finish. Mattered all the way throughout the course and the race today, and that's fabulous. So what's on the horizon? We've got the Worlds coming up next week, which is exciting. Next Saturday, that's the Saturday after Thanksgiving in the U.S. I think that's the Saturday after. No, actually, that is the Saturday of Andy Jenner Appreciation Day in the UK, which is nice.
Yeah,
it's always nice.
It's also the weekend of the Worlds.
There you go.
That's what we're saying. It's the weekend of the Worlds. So, how many riders do we think we're going to participate in that huge event?
So looking at the rosters, you can head to the amazing website that Tam Burns and his group has put together. It's got lights, it's got fireworks, it's got flashes, and then you could find some links that'll tell you how many riders that are going to be there. And then it looks like there's going to be over 650 riders at that race. So that is super exciting. It's going to be in the Zwift module. It's separated, and each of the categories, both men and women, will be let out separately in separate modules, which will allow each of the races to be individualized, which is unique. Before it's been released all at one go, but I think we're going to see a very different race than we normally see here on the Volcano or in a traditional OdivaZ race where there's a neutral start. It is going to be watt drop right from the line, Chris. So riders are getting ready for that kind of output as they do prepare for this race. So that's an exciting thing. Along with our normal weekly schedule here from OdivaZ, each of the teams are putting some great races together. You've got stuff from Zwift headquarters that is amazing. You've got pros on the course. We've got so many pros on the course and so many riders that are on the course. It's breaking the worlds. And so meaning that people are having trouble getting on. There's not enough room. You're in the line standing outside of the club and no one's letting you in, Chris. Can you imagine?
Yeah, no kidding. You got me excited, and I went and looked at the site myself. There's so much sound and excitement on that site. I hadn't seen it before. I'm really impressed now.
It is.
Really impressed.
It's an exciting time. So like I was saying,
Sam is awesome.
He is definitely. And it looks like we're jumping into our next race here. But before we have that, so it is time to say thank you for coming on, everybody. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. And don't forget, check out that Fearless Women's Race if you are interested in women's racing. And from Chris and Jason here, we want to say thank you for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.